The Gilgulim, which some of us might be familiar, some people are not. Gilgulim literally means recycling. Neshamot get recycled. Mitgalgel. A galgal is a circle. A galgal is the wheel of your car, and that's why it's called a Gilgul. You understand, something that repeats itself and goes over. And we're going to explain details. There's some things people do know, some people don't know. I'm going to try in the beginning, first couple of shirim, just to give a clear understanding of what's going on behind Gilgulim and what's the idea. Gilgulim is very important to understand for a couple reasons. Too important. Some people will say, "I have to know." Everyone who's not in the shir right now says, "Well, I have to know this stuff, right? Leave me alone. I have to know this stuff. What difference does it make if I know this stuff?" There's a couple reasons. First of all, the Stipler has a sefer Chaye Olam, which is a Musar sefer. The Stipler, and he writes Mefurash there about the importance of Gilgulim and knowing about them. That's first of all. But he writes also, and it's important to learn the subject because it helps. He says we live in a natural world. Hashem wanted a natural world. We live in an Olam TV, and we need to learn these things in order to make us realize that there's something beyond. Gilgulim is something we could see sometimes. I'm going to give you tons of stories. We even have stories from our day and age, okay, about these ideas. But besides that, he says it's something to give us a little bit of chizuk. Sometimes we need something to keep us going, to give us a little petrol in the car, right? To keep us a little moving, because we don't always know, believe, understand, and sometimes he says very clearly that it's very important to learn these things in order to give us a little bit of a clear understanding of what we need to do. The chizuk, he brings a few stories, which again we'll get to everything. We'll get to all the details there. Okay. That's first of all. That's the first reason. And another reason, which we'll probably get to maybe next week or maybe even this week, is also understanding a little bit about Tzadik Veralo, the famous question about why good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people, and we all know, unfortunately, children that are niftar very young, unfortunately, in tragedies that we hear about, and even little babies. It doesn't make any sense. How could these things happen? So this will be a clear explanation to all of that. Now, if you're going to ask me details about, give me someone's name and ask me why this happened to him, you could call it Prof. Fataya, or if Yehuda Fataya, he had an answer for everybody. I don't have any answers. I'm not going to tell you about any specifics. I'm going to give you the Shulchan Aruch, the basics about what's written and what's the klalim. And if you want the details, there's someone up in, you can go to Rav Duv Chatzer if you want. You can enjoy, there's a lot of Chasher people here, not me. Okay, Al Kopanim, that's that. Now, in order to, okay, that's first of all. Okay, that's A. B, another important nekuda which I wanted to mention, another fundamental nekuda on this thing that I want to mention is you should know, something people don't know, this idea of a Gilgul is actually a machloket. Not everybody agrees to it, believe it or not. There are those that disagree to this idea of Gilgulim, this thing that I wouldn't say we're born and bred. I have a feeling most of us didn't grow up with this idea of Gilgulim, but anyways, the fact that we've heard about it so much is not agreed to by everyone. Let's just give me a kitzur of what is stated here. First of all, in the Sefer Ikrim, in Chelik Dalid, he writes over there also that he brings Yesh Omrim She'en Musag Shel Gilgul. There's a Rav Karkash who is the Rebbe of the Rivash. That's from the Rishonim. Borderline Rishonim, Achronim, but he also says that, and Rav Bardeshai, names of people that we don't not so familiar with, but some of the Rishonim held that there was no such idea of Gilgul. Now, I have to point out, which already people themselves point out, is those people, the Reshit Chochmah says this, that already those people that had no shaychut to Kabbalah, they can more easily deny the ideas of Gilgulim. They will be more quick to do it. It's not mamish mefurish in the Zohar. A little bit it is, but even if it is a little bit. They didn't have a Zohar. You understand? We have to know that the way it worked is the Zohar, of course, as we know, was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and it was afterwards nitman. It was nistar. People didn't know where it was for a tremendous amount of time. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was, if I can use Goya dates, in the beginning of the like the 100s or the 200s, right after the Chorban Beit HaMikdash, as we all know. His Rebbe was Rebbe Akiva, who was at the time of the Chorban Beit HaMikdash. You understand? So that's when he wrote the Sefer. After that, it was Nitman, it was Nistar, and many of the Mefarshim did not know a lot of the ideas of Kabbalah. Okay, there was a certain hand-me-down, but the people didn't have a book, and it wasn't known. And as we all know, a Talmud of the Ramban, Rav Dilayon, his name was the one who was Megaleh, the Sefer, and who was known, and you could tell from all the writings of the Ramban, who was a Rishon, was one of the first people that started using words is Le'amivine Emet, or the Soda Ibur. He would use words that have to do with Sod, you understand? And his Pirush al Torah uses it. We're going to be speaking about the Ramban all the time here on Gilgulim. I'm going to show you soon. Okay, but the Ramban was a Rishon, which is 1200s, and around 1200s, he was already quoting the ideas of the Zohar and all these ideas. There's a tremendous he never quotes the word Zohar, yeah? But there's many, many times where he quotes things and it's exactly the same things written in the Zohar. Mamash, he came on word for word almost, sometimes. So it's obviously he had the Zohar, but there was a 1,000-year gap where it wasn't around. So in that case, you'll find that many people end up denying certain things that we consider basic Kabbalah ideas. You follow what I'm saying? Everyone's with me? Yeah, you understand? That's why it's an important idea. The Shem Gilgulim was written by the Chida. The Chida wrote the Shem Gilgulim. He brings that the Rimigash and the Canada, I guess it was from Canada, I don't know. Right? He said they had a disagreement in this time period. They had a big, during that time period, whether there is such a thing as Gilgul and not such a thing as, And then he says, but there was a Maisa, until there was a Maisa with Rav Yehuda Arya Mimodina. Rav Yehuda Arya Mimodina, he was adamant that there was no such thing as a Gilgul. It's not true. Who's making this stuff up? And I told you we're talking about Rishonim before the Gilui of the Zohar. He saw a Maisa which convinced him that he was mistaken, and he admitted that he was mistaken. What was the mistake? Well, what happened? He had a neighbor. This Rav Arya Mimodina had a neighbor who had a child. She had a child. This lady had a child, and he was the Rav of the area. He was the Rav of the town, or whatever it is. And after a little bit of time, the boy was 6 months old, and he got sick. He got pretty seriously sick. He was good. They immediately called the Rav. They called up the Rav and they asked him, "Can you please come?" It looks like he was already getting a goses. He was on his way out. They knew he didn't have much time to live, so they brought the Rav. "Can you say Shema Yisrael? They'll say something with him before the boy is niftar." And he brings over there. He started saying some mizmorim with him. He didn't even get to Shema yet. He started saying some mizmorim with the tinok, and then suddenly the 6-month-old said Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad and was niftar. That's what he brings out. He himself was made. And what's nice about this Maisa, it was someone who denied Gilgulim. He was on the camp, no way, Jose, right? No, keep away. Right? I don't like this hokey pokey stuff. Right? And he said, I saw this, Vayatza nishmato be'echad. He said, Vayatza nishmato be'echad, uminoto yom be'ala, hemin be'gilgul. These are words of the Chizar. The zevadei neshama shenitgalgel. He understood this boy, this little baby, was a neshama that was mitgalgel. Vayalo zeh tikun, and it ended up being a tikun for him to finish up whatever tikun, which again, we'll bring stories later with reasons also. This one wasn't brought a reason. It was obviously required some type of tikun, and that's why this little child had to be niftar. You follow? So that's a good makor for this idea. The Reshit Chochma in Shar Hayira Perik Yud Gimel. Over there he has a longer richut about Gilgulim. The Reshit Chochma in Perik Yud Gimel. He brings a richut about Gilgulim. And he brings, here, follow. Rav Haigon lo zachali limud Kabbalah. Since Rav Haigon didn't have any Kabbalah, no, the Go'onim, everyone knows the Seder it was. There was Tanaim, who were in the time right after the Churban Beit HaMikdash. We have the Amoraim, which was in the 300, 400, 500 Kufa. That's, of course, our Gemarot. And then after that, we had the Rabbanan Savarai, a couple 100 years. And then we had the Geonim. The Zman of the Geonim are almost the turn of the 1,000-year, what's called the millennia, right? Millennia, I think it's called, right? Yeah. The millennia. They were during the time of the 7, 8, 900. That was the Rav Haigon, Rav Shri Rigon, Rav Chaigon. I'm sure you've heard of some of these names at least, even though we don't read so much of this Sfarim. But the Gaonim were during that time period. So Rav Haigon was very strong against the Zman of the Gilgulim. And again, he was before the Rishonim. He was before the Gilui of the Zohar, and he says he didn't know. Look, I wouldn't say it, but the Reishi Chochma says since he didn't know Kabbalah, he wasn't exposed to Kabbalah. Hayal lo eg b'zeh. He would even make fun of people who would give such a shir. He would throw me out of this room right now if he was here. He would say, "What are you crazy?" Aval Ramban sheken zachal lehatzitz be'or ganus. These are the words of Reishi Chochma. But the Ramban, who was able to look in the or ganus, into the hidden light, hatov hevi inyan Gilgul. He himself brought what we call Soda Ibur, the idea of Gilgul, like again I'll explain to you, and therefore that's what he brings. The Chai Olam himself, which is the Stipler again, he brings that Rov Rubo Shel Kadmani, Afilu Shechalko, even though there are those that argue, Rov Rubo Shel Geonim, they all agree on the Indian of Gilgul. That's what's mitkabel Etzleinu and Klal Yisrael, as we all know. The Arizal was very, is all safer in Shar Gilgulim, which we'll be quoting from a little bit. Don't worry, I'm not going to be saying anything too fancy, anything too abstract. Okay, I'll make everything tangible. Why? Because I don't know anything abstract. That's why I'm only going to say things that are tangible, right? And that's a full sefer about it, and we know based on the Zohar, like I told you, and the Reshit Chochmah and other Mekubalim, which all bring these ideas. Okay, so that is our introduction a little bit today to this important idea that we call Gilgulim, the reasons why it's kedai to learn it, A, for chizuk, and B, to give a lot of answers to a lot of difficult questions. You know, I personally think someone who goes into Kiruv should learn this a little bit. You don't have to know all the details, but they should know some of the basics in order to be able to explain certain things. And if people don't want to be Makabel, so jump in the lake. You can be Makabel Kadosh Baruch Hu either. You can say that the world is atheist. You can be an atheist also. A person can do what he wants. But if this is how the world works, that's the way it works. You can also deny Tchiyat HaMetim. You can do whatever you want. Okay, anyway, so that's that. In order to avoid a Gilgul, also, I want to just quote from Rav Fataya. There's also a sefer I'll be quoting from a lot. The Minchat Yehuda is Rav Yehuda Fataya. He was nifter in the middle of the 50s, okay? Crazy stories. This book will keep you up at night, all night. You start opening the book, you won't go to sleep, I'm telling you. It's unbelievable. I'll be quoting to you a few of the stories. Like I said, if I start quoting you the stories in there, I'll be able to keep the share for a few hours, and I can keep it it'll be very interesting, unbelievable stories. And what's unbelievable about the book, I have to mention, about the Minchat Yehuda, it's called. I have one at home, and you can buy it. There's in the stores there. It's not hard to get. I can tell you where to buy it. What? Are there pictures? Is that what you said? I was saying this shiur would be a lot more exciting if I had like a mosach in the back. I figured, you know, and that's how the interesting people, they do it with, like, you know, like space and lights and things like that, or like the pictures, and you have the spooky music in the background. It would be very much more. I'm not so content, so you just have to stick with me. I feel bad. Okay, but anyways, what's unbelievable about that sefer is you'll see when I quote the stories, he quotes people and times and place. He doesn't stop like say, and I once had a story, he says the name of the person, he says the date, he says exactly what happened with different Gilgulim. You understand? That's what he has in different places. He tells exactly what happened. I was very surprised. One time he actually quoted, I showed it to my mother. He quoted my mother's name. My mother's name. And my mother's name is not Sarah Bat Rachel, I'm saying. My mother's name is Imi Muarmi. Her mother is Katun Bet Bataziza. That's my mother's name. Katun, she's a Sephardi, from Iraq. He said, Katun Bataziza. That's what he said. She was with a Gilgul in this. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like very scared. My grandmother's name is Aziza. That's my grandmother's name. And my mother's name is... Anyways, but that's, I'm just saying there's a lot of details in there. But, okay. So, B'ezrat Hashem, like I said, we'll get there. All right, so anyways, one of the things that he writes there in Rav Fatai's Sefer is he says in order to avoid a Gilgul, you really can never know if you're going to be stuck to a Gilgul, which is not Geshmak. Why is it not Geshmak? Why is it not good? Because when a person's in a Gilgul, you feel almost like you're in jail. You're almost limited. I can't get out of here. You're stuck. I want to get out of here. I just want to get to where I'm supposed to be. You understand? It's what's the most... There's one thing about being in a jail that okay, you're in a small cell and it's not exactly enjoyable. You can't get, but it's also, I can't get anywhere. It's so much more painful to be able to see something outside or see some beauty outside. And I wish I could just go and see some, or be there, or try, or someone gives you a nice, right? Someone will give you a vacation booklet while you're sitting in prison, right? That's not a chesed, right? You're not doing anything. The beauty of the mountains. Say again? What type of Gilgul are we talking about? Oh, I'm going to speak with all of them. Don't worry. Right. You'll see. It's going to depend. But you're right. I'm just giving you a basic rundown right now, but you're right. It depends on, there's two different types, but you're right. Okay, he doesn't feel meshuchar, so I'm just pointing out, so it's a little bit of a pain. And what happens is that a person can be there for a tremendous amount of time. He also speaks out that a person can be there for a tremendous amount of time. A person can be there for 5 minutes, or he can literally be there, and he has cases like that, for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. Okay, he has a few that were there for a few hundreds of years. So whenever we talk about someone who is in Gehenna after 12 months, everything's scot-free, and you have these foolish people who say, no, okay, let me enjoy this world. I'll settle the 12 months in Gehenna. They don't know what they're talking about. You understand? You never have one of these people. They say, okay, let me enjoy myself in this world, do whatever I want. So I heard you have a 12-month penalty in Gehenna. It's like going to jail for 12 months. Say it, I'll handle it. They're crazy because they don't realize. First of all, you have everything we spoke about until now. The chibuta kever is one of the most painful things. And the kafakel, if somebody deserves that one, or a karet, which we also spoke about, which most of these people that I'm talking about are referring to karet, right? And here you have it. Gilgulim can last years, decades, hundreds, centuries. It can mamish last a long time before you're zochet to get to Gehenna. And then you're zochet, mazel tov, you get to Gehenna, you don't make a party. You understand? You have to realize it's not so simple. So A person has to be careful. So he says to get away from the Gilgulim, a person has to do a proper tshuva, al chata, be'olam hazeh, not mitoch yisurim. He says it has to be mitoch yira ve'ava. And it has to be that he did it because he knows, and he did it before, especially before, in a time when he could do proper tshuva. He's chozer b'tshuva shlema, nitzalu migilgulim anal. That's what he brings. Okay, it has to be mitshuva mi'ir, mi'ava. Okay, this is already a little bit more, not for us right now to speak about, but he says, especially if you're osek b'torah, shalom manat lekabel pras. You're osek b'torah l'shem shamayim. Okay, you osek b'torah l'shem shamayim. Don't take any pras, you don't take anything, you just do it because it's the right thing to do, and you do it. It's a special segula as ne'ekar legamre. It could save you mamish from the Gilgulim, which I saw in the Ben Ish Chai writes in one place, that the best way to pull the nitzotzot out of the klipot, you have klipot, which is what brings you to these bad places, the best way to do it is with Torah. When the korach of Torah is able to pull it out, and that's able to save you. So al kapanim, that is this idea of Gilgulim and a little bit of understanding behind it. Okay? Okay, now let's mention a couple ideas, pointers here. Like again, eventually we'll get to a lot of stories. We'll have a couple shirim just with stories, I think. But let's mention a couple ideas behind this idea of Gilgulim. Now I'm starting from the Reshit Chochmah. Again, we have different Marmakomot. We're starting from the Reshit Chochmah in Perek Yud Gimel. So he says like this, the Reshit Chochmah says, why does a person have to go into a Gilgul? Why do I have to come back into someone else's body? What's the necessity for such a thing? Why is it not sufficient? A person goes through the machpesah, he goes to the laundry, right? He goes into Gehenna, 12 months, washes him up, scrubs him down, cleans him up. He comes out a brand new piece of clothing, and that's enough. Very good question. Why isn't Gehenna, what does Gilgulim do that Gehenna doesn't? Why is it required one more than the other? Here's the question, yeah? That's the question that the Reshit Chochmah asks over there in Perek Gimel. That's what he asks. And he answers, there's two answers basically. The first one is that we find there's something that there's two, we know there's in halakha, in Torah, there's two things. There's rota says, there's averot, which I do wrong, and there's kum ve'aseis, and there's things to do, things that you're supposed to do. Right? Familiar? Right? There's things that you're not supposed to do and not to do. So all the things I do wrong, if someone is over an Aveirah, he does something wrong, he needs to be cleansed of that negativity that he got connected to. You understand? Lo aleinu, the guy ate something not kosher. He was mechalel Shabbat, or he did an Isur, he had an Isur relationship, or something like that. All these things need to be cleansed, and that gets cleansed through Karet or Gehenna. Through Gehenna. You understand? That's how Gehenna takes care of it. Scrubs it off. Get rid of it, take it off. Scrub, remove it in order to take it off. However, Gehenna doesn't have the koach, the capabilities to give you something you're lacking. If you're missing something, mashu chaser po, if you're lacking something, which we refer to as a kumasei, then Gehenna can't give that to you. It can't give that to you. What's it going to do? Scrub. It doesn't help. You're missing something. There's something chaser po, and therefore you have no choice. The person has no choice but to come back down and get it and do it correctly. Get it right this time. Don't mess up again. You understand? You have to come back and fix up that you did not finish the job. That's what is required of you. That's what you have to do. The Chofetz Chaim quotes mamish the same idea. Okay, the same idea. The Chofetz Chaim is in Zohar Lemiriam and Perek Yud Bet, if you want to look it up. It's in the Kol Kitvei Chofetz Chaim. He says after a person is niftar me'olam, even after hundreds of years, a person, the nefesh could be mitzta'er a tremendous amount of time. What's he speaking about over there? What the Chofetz Chaim spoke about a lot. He said, and this is a chiddush, I would have said, this goes on doing a mitzvah. L'mashal, the Reshit Chochmah says, l'mashal, if a person didn't put on tefillin, we know the Gemara says, if a person didn't put on tefillin his whole life, he's definitely coming back as a Gilgul, no question. He's got a one-way ticket back here. Who knows how long and how long. Could be even, again, I'm not getting into cheshbonot shamayim, even if he missed sometimes of putting tefillin, he was supposed to put it on, so maybe he might have to come back a little bit in order to be mechaper for those few times that he didn't put on tefillin. Those could be cheshbonot shamayim, okay? A person didn't do a certain mitzvah that he was supposed to do. A person was missing doing the proper thing. A person, let's say he didn't do something in Beit Adam L'Chaver properly. He might have to come back in order to make a tikun. But he says even a bigger chiddush. The Chofetz Chaim writes over there in Zohar Lemiriam in Perek Yud Bet. He says if a person didn't learn the amount of hespek he was supposed to do, wow, that's scary. He says if you did, he says a certain parak you didn't finish. A masechta, I'll read it to you inside. I wasn't sure if they have one here, but I can read it to you inside. It says if you didn't finish a masechta, or if a person didn't finish something he was supposed to do. Now, everyone's different. No one here is going to be Rav Chaim Kanievsky. I don't expect anyone to know what he knows. Don't worry, you're a punter. Okay? But the question is, what are you supposed to know? Right? What are you supposed to learn? Hashem knows upstairs what you have what He gave you the capabilities. Some of us have less money, we have to work harder. Some of us have different capabilities, so we're not able to know as much. Some people are more forgetful, etc. Some people aren't cut out for learning as much. You're supposed to a little bit less. Whatever you're supposed to be cut out for, okay? But that is your requirement, and if you don't, it's dangerous. Is that mesukah? It really could be something that a person can come back as a Gilgul in order to fix up. Because like I said, Gehenna can't fix that up. You can't get fixed up in Gehenna. Gehenna cleans. It doesn't give. So if you're missing something, a person actually might have to come back. This is a chizuk. How much more we should be learning. Make sure if you know you have the time to learn, take advantage. It's much better than reading a newspaper. Trust me. Okay? Take advantage. You have to take advantage.
Come back as a cat.
Okay, you're right. No, you're right. I'm going to get to that. I'm actually going to get to that. No, everyone knows Gilgulim is cats, but that's because you live in Israel. You've been in Israel too long. Everyone sees these cats coming in the basement. Oh, no, Gilgul.
Is that the reason why people have short lives and they die earlier?
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning before, and we're going to speak about it later. That's what happens. People have short lives because they're just finishing up. But we're going to speak about all this, trust me. Okay? Al Kopanim, that's what he brings down. So even bitul a mitzvah shel Talmud Torah lo mo'il lezeh he brings from the Sefer Charedim. It's in Loita says Zayin. The Sefer Charedim writes Gehenna metakena nefesh shenitma machmat avonotav. Right? It cleans up what you did wrong. Aval masha chaser lebetorah. Right? Whatever you're missing, like I said before, similar to the idea. Okay? You can't get all you did Gehenna, and therefore a person requires a Gilgul to come back. Okay, and listen to, he was always very into his mishalim. He brings a mashal of a person who goes overseas. Now back then, going overseas doesn't mean taking an El Al trip for 6 hours. Going overseas was a 2-3 hour. I was thinking of a 2-3 hour tour, right? It was a 2 or 3 month trip. Till you get there, till you get across the ocean, till you come back, till you finish, right? Till you're able to see his family, no communication, right? Believe it or not, right? No emails, no Skype, no nothing. It's unbelievable. And they didn't even know whether their family was alive or dead. They didn't know if he died, nothing. He was away for 2-3 months. Imagine he takes the whole trip in order to make some parnasa. The poor guy was an ani. He goes, he finally comes back, he finally gets there, and he realizes over here, there's no schara, there's nothing to do here. Everything that he does, he turns around, he wastes his time, and he has to only come back home to try to do it all over again. Ugh, what agmat nefesh, what a pain. It's so difficult, right? Now, it's hard for us to relate. This recently, over here, unfortunately, the post office is a little bit, got mashuga over here. My wife went to the post office there, she waited 45 minutes, and then she gave up. Ugh, it's so upsetting. It's one thing if you go and you just leave. You go for 45 minutes until someone's got to complain over here, what's going on here. Right? And it's a very, very bad situation here. There's nothing to do because there's not mitkadem. You don't even see something happening. So that's much more painful when you went the whole trip. You did the 9 yards. The psukim say when you plant and you don't get to pull it out, it's much more worse than you never planted in the first place. It's one thing if you're poor, but if you're trying and you don't get it, it's 20 times much more agmat nefesh, and that's what it is, a Gilgul. I was here 70, 80, 90 years. I did my trip. I did everything I had to do. Coming back, the pearly gates open. I shouldn't say that. The gates open, right? You get to see Olam Haba, right? Chas v'shalom, right? Right? The gates open. You get to see Olam Haba. They go, bye bye. No. You right back where you came from. Right? It's incredibly agmat nefesh. That's what I meant. It's a little bit of a jail cell. You feel like you're back to where you have to go, to where you didn't want to be.
That's always pre-Gehenna?
It's pre-Gehenna being correct, yes.
Is it the
Yeah, it's never after Gehenna. I've never seen after Gehenna. What?
Get serve Hashem again.
Yeah, you're a very positive person, Kol Kavod to you. I'm very proud of you, Daniel. He's right. He's very positive. You get to do again Avodat Hashem and this, but it's not a request. That really was the chet of Adam Rishon, by the way. The chet of Adam Rishon is because he ate from the tree because he wanted to serve Hashem better, and Hashem said, "Don't you dare make those cheshbonot." Right? But you're right. That a little bit was his cheshbon. Anyway, so that's what it is. Okay, that's the first thing. That's the first thing that he says. Okay, the Shar Gilgulim says most of the Neshamot right now, and now by nowadays we're all Gilgulim. Like we'll explain what that means. But nowadays we're already all Gilgulim, and that's why you'll see a lot of what we see. I want to quote one thing from the Kedushat HaLevi. Okay, the Kedushat Alevi, just on this first reason for Gilgulim, the Kedushat Alevi, Levi Yitzchak Biberditchev, yeah? In Parshat Ve'et Chanan, he says a beautiful pshat in a very difficult Gemara, which I've never understood. They have different pirushim. Everybody, of course, has different pirushim. Even Rashi is difficult. But the Gemara in Eruvin and Daf Yud Gimel says that there was a machloket. Was it noach lo l'adam shenivra or noach l'adam shelo nivra? Is it better that a person was created or not created? And the Gemara says nimnu v'gamar. We came out noach l'adam shelo nivra. It's better that the person shouldn't have been created, but now that he's created, achshav shenimra yifashvish b'ma'asav. He should at least do tshuva and try to be a good guy. Which again, I'm not going to get into all the pirushim of the Gemara, but it's a little bit strange. What do you mean noach? Hashem made a mistake? Like what does this mean? Right? So it says because since the majority of people don't do the right things in this, and maybe it's better that person wouldn't have been created, but for those that were the good things, so of course they are the right things. But he says the Kedushat Alevi, based on what we're saying now today, he says a kavana de tachlit briato letaken gilgulo hakodem. The tachlit, especially in our day and age, is to be mitaken your previous Gilgul. That's what we're here for, to finish up the Gilgulim. We're trying to finish. There's an otzer of Neshamot, which needs to be fixed. When it gets to the final end of the end of the line, there's a little bit more to finish. And that's your avodah, to try to finish with your doing good things and doing the right thing, to finish up the little bit of the Gilgul and that cleaned up. And then Mashiach comes. You have a bunch of Neshamot. When they're all finished, 100%, trust me, Mashiach is coming. He's on his way. That's it. That's what it means. That's why we're nikvit to the Mashiach, even though we're such a crazy door, because we're at the end of the tunnel. That's it. We're finishing up all the last Gilgulim. We're just cleaning up the last Neshamot in order to make sure that they're clean. And then he says that's what it means in the Gemara. The Gemara says, it's better you shouldn't have come to the world. Your Gilgul should have been finished before. It would have been better just to 1,000 years ago, my Gilgul should have been done with already. But because someone messed up over here and someone messed up over here, now that you were created, now you're already a Gilgul, you're a reincarnation of someone else who didn't finish the job. You finish the job. Just finish it, so you don't have to come back again. It's a very nice pshat. It's a chassidish pshat, but it's a very nice pshat in the Gemara that it would have been better not to come back. But once you're already coming back, finish the job, so you don't have to come back again and again and again and get Mashiach to come here already. So finally, we could finish the final Tikun. You understand? That's what he is. And you should know most of what we're saying here is in the Zohar also. The Zohar says that there's a difference between things that you could clean, positive things and not positive things. It's very it overlaps with what it is. He himself quotes in the Meshit Chochmah. He quotes the Zohar. Div shelo nivra mizeh shelo tiken et atzmo. Okay, that's what it is.
So if we're all Gilgulim, we're not really here for ourselves. We're here for someone else.
I mean you are getting schar for fixing it, and you're going to get credit for doing everything that you do. But you're also here to fix up that neshama. Yourself is your neshama, yeah. You happen to maybe be sharing it with someone else, okay, and someone else also has a similar neshama. We might speak about that later. But your neshama is who you are, so you are going to get full credit in Olam Haba when you go in the next world with your neshama. With the
still me, even when the Gilgul.
Yes, you are still you, because you're going to get tchiyat meitim with your body, with your neshama, and that's what it is. So we'll speak about chalakim in neshama. Could be neshama can be broken into pieces a little bit, but be current. That's how it is.
But we don't know what we're here to fix up, though.
That's going to be the practical side. When we get to the halacha l'maisa, we're going to speak about that. Yes, we are. You can figure it out. I'm going to give you instructions how to figure it out. I'm trying to make this practical as possible. I don't want to stay abstract. I'm going to bleed at it. That won't be next week. It'll probably be in 2 weeks. I hope to get there. But there are ways, and I'm coming from Sfarim, how to figure out what your problem is, what your Gilgul is. Okay. Okay, that's that. So the person comes back for that reason. I want to quote one thing from the Ben Ish Chai, which is also from the Shar Gilgulim, Rizal. He does say though, and this is a danger also, a person needs to come back, like I said, to fix up something you didn't finish, right? Let's say you didn't learn enough Torah, or you didn't put on tefillin enough, or you didn't do some positive mitzvah that you were supposed to do, or you did something wrong. Okay, sometimes we'll see stories where someone did something wrong and he had to come back also. So there's definitely stories like that. He did aveirot that had to be fixed up, okay? But even if he does that, still says the Ben Ish Chai, you come back to try to fix that up. And even if you end up doing something wrong here, hopefully that won't take away from where you're already holding. He gets into Kabbalah a little bit, but he says that nitzotz was already cleaned up. You already cleaned up that thing, you understand? By coming back, right, when you go for a second run, you're putting yourself in danger because you might mess up again or mess up in something else which you did good in the first time, you understand? So that is a little bit of an issue. But he says if it was already cleansed and it was already taken care of, most of the time it's Beseder Gemor. You're not going to be held accountable because that was already fixed up. You follow what I'm saying? Because otherwise he says, Ein L'Davar Sof. You'll mamish keep going and going every time someone did this. Oh, he did that, he did that. You'll never end. So he says, no, that was taken care of. And you'll see with the stories. We're going to give a lot. I know a personal story. I know someone who actually remembered his previous Gilgul. But I'll tell you afterwards about it. I'm sorry?
We fought from certain Averas, we already done them in our previous lives, we didn't do them. And
Right.
If you do these Averas, then you're not accountable for it.
You'll be accounted for, but you won't come back for a Gilgul for it. That's all. You won't have to come back again. It will be taken care of maybe in Gehenim or whatever he has to do. He'll have to do it, of course. He'll get cleansed, but we won't throw him back to fix that one up again. Because then it won't end. But he'll have to be cleansed. You can't Kalgel, a positive thing that was already in the Nefesh. This is all the reason why Gehenim cannot take care of what a Gilgul could take care of. That's why we need to have two separate mishpatim, one which is called Gilgul and one which is called Gehenim. I want to say a second reason, which is brought in the Reshit Chochmah, much more bekitzer, much more simple, but just a second reason for this phenomenon, why it can't be. He basically says, very simple, probably the way we would have understood before this, much more simple, that there are some Averot which are such tzatzot, which are such bombs, which can't be cleaned in Gehenim. And he gives a simple mashal. Sometimes if a person has a sickness, he says a disease, let's say leprosy. Yeah, leprosy is a bad word, but sorry. A person has a disease or a leprosy or some type of thing on his skin. So there's two ways to get rid of chas v'shalom. A person has cancer, lo aleinu, yeah, the machala. So sometimes it can be removed if it's not malignant, lo aleinu, if it's not aggressive. It can basically be removed by doing a proper operation, removing it, cleaning around the sides. You get a good doctor, B'ezrat Hashem, chas v'shalom, it should never happen. And it's taken care of. It's closed up, and that's what it is. It's painful. He has to go through surgery. He has to go through rehabilitation after a while or whatever it is, right? And it takes a few months afterwards. He says a gomel. He has to go through it. It was painful. It wasn't easy, but he had to do it. But that's if he had a simple chas v'shalom machala. But if the machala was lo aleinu, malignant, aggressive, or was in the wrong place, and really in the pancreas, lo aleinu chas v'shalom, I shouldn't even potech piv. If it was in a real serious situation, so over here, if it was over here, sometimes an aver needs to be removed. The whole limb has to be removed. They found it in the person's leg, chas v'shalom. So they say, look, it's up to you. You want to die, you want to amputate your leg, take a choice, right? So what does he take a choice? And obviously he knows what his choice is. He does it, even though he will have to limp the rest of his life. He'll be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. But he does what is necessary in order to save face, right? In order to be able to survive. That's what it is. All happens with breast cancer, right? Obviously that's it's the most dangerous cancer, but that's why they immediately sometimes have to amputate in order to avoid a dangerous situation. Okay, that's what happens. That's these two types of machalot. And he says it's the same thing with certain averot. There's some averot in Olam Haba which can just be removed. A little bit of Gehenim, a little bit of kafakela, a little bit of this, a little bit of chibut kever, and and everything's clean, right? Everything's good, and you can go home and say a gomel in Olam Haba. You understand? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, everything's hunky dory. However, if a person has a malignant lo aleinu avera, he has an avera which is diseased. Let's say he did a lot of it, right? Or the Gemara talks about a karkafta de lo manach tefillin. He never put on tefillin in his life. That's a real serious event, which I think we mentioned last week already. That's why Chabad does what they do, in order to make sure at least a couple times the person put on tefillin. We want to make sure that a little bit he keeps to something, abides to something. If he has a real serious disease, or he did something, a whopper, dopper, very bad avera, okay, so in such a thing, sometimes Gehenim can't take care of it, and he has to amputate a leg. And over here, and there's stories of this also, where they have, the person is given a choice. You're invited, you're ready, you're invited to go to Gehenim, and then go to Gan Eden straight. You don't need to go to Gilgul. However, you're going to be missing an arm. He said, no, you're going to be missing an arm. And it's not literally an arm, obviously it's in your Neshama. You're going to be missing some chelik, but you'll have a permanent, eternal misser. Or you have the other option of going and being in Gilgul. I can't tell you how long it's going to go. It depends how long the tikunim take. Depends how long things are going to get fixed up. It could take 100 years, it could take 10 years, it could take 5, it could take a century, it could take 2 centuries, whatever, it depends. Take your choice, and it's a very painful decision. In Yom HaDin, it's spoken about in the Yom HaDin when they speak about it. It's a very painful decision. Should I do it? This is eternity. This is not. You have to go back. It's not so good, right? A person is doing it. Sometimes he makes a decision. That's why you might end up coming back in order to fix the Gilgul, come back, go to Gehenim, and then finally get to Olam Haba with that Aver, who comes back full, intact, and shleimu. You understand? That's what happened. The easiest way ever, you're still alive, right? I'm giving you an eitzah. Don't lose the Aver. Keep it around, right? Try to do tshuva properly. Make sure you don't do something wrong, and then you'll be okay. Okay? That's how it is. Okay? Okay. Okay, that's this idea. Seder, that's the two mahalchim of understanding Gilgulim behind of what happens, and that's what it is. Okay, Seder. Now, we don't have so much time left. I have about 5 minutes left. I just want to speak out one small piece, and this will finish. Okay? Something that is mentioned in the Ramak. He has a sefer called Shir Koma. Okay? And it's also mentioned in the Shar Gilgulim of the Arizal. Most of the Shar Gilgulim, which I'm quoting, is all in Agdama Chav Bet 22. If someone wants to look it up, it's not hard. It's pretty straightforward. And Shar Bet is the two main things that we're talking about. So over here he brings, there's three, this is what you were asking before. What are you asking? What type of Gilgul is there? Well, this will finish and we'll pick it up next time, okay? Mm-hmm. But you should know, all of us know there's Gilgulim that a person, they basically say there's three types of Gilgulim. There's three types of ways that a person can be midgalgel. A person can have Gilgulim. Okay, there's three types of ways that a person has a Gilgul. The first way is the most simplest way, is he goes straight into the Vlad, straight into the fetus. He goes straight into the fetus. He goes immediately into the fetus. We hold the Gemara in Sanhedrin as a safek. When is a child considered a child? Immediately by Yitzirah, when he's conception. Thank you, conception. Immediately by conception, he starts as a couple atoms, as we all know. We see a couple micro. I'm sure we've seen pictures before. You start mamish like a couple cells, and then the cells split. And this, you don't have so much of a tzura until eventually, about a week or two, you already start seeing a little bit of an image of a person. That's what it is. Or at the time of birth, most of the poskim go. Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about this, that we go from the zman of conception. Okay, you'll see this as a nafkamina halacha, which again we'll speak about next week. Or 40 days, or from conception. Yeah, it's also a question. Yeah, you're right. There's a question about that. That's already one thing that's relevant. You can understand is, are you allowed to abort a child? Right? Some people actually hold, even the Ben Ish Chai holds, until 40 days you're allowed to, because it's not considered a person until 40 days. Okay, there is such a shita like that. But if we hold, like I said, this Ramosha is a little bit choshesh immediately, that he's already considered a person, he's considered a fetus, so immediately the abortion is already us. Or Moshe was mamish machmer more than anybody else about this. Immediately from conception it is not permitted. There are some shittas that are even lenient, even longer. I'm even afraid to speak about it on the camera to a certain extent. But there are shittas that hold even longer than 40 days. Sometimes it is permitted. Okay, in certain situations, it all depends on when these are. But if that's true, this is enough kamina for us also. If a person's considered a person immediately by conception, so it already is a place for a Gilgul to suck in. A Gilgul can already suck into him. This is the first type of Gilgul where when he's already a little itsy bitsy child, not a child, a fetus, when he's already from before, already the Neshama takes part of him, and he will never know that he has another Neshama. Probably, I would venture to say like most people in this room, right? Even though I told you most of you are Gilgulim, okay? Most of you became a Gilgul when you're already in your mother's stomach, if you remember, okay? Right? That's when you receive this Gilgul, and that's what you've been taking with you, and we'll explain what that does to you soon. That's the first type of Gilgul, which is a classic Gilgul, and the most common Gilgul, if I could say. Okay? In order to finish being mitaken, what needs to be mitaken. The second type of Gilgul is when it comes to a child be'et she'omed livaled, at the time that he's actually coming. It comes as a tosefet to the neshama, meaning over here. The first way was, that's your neshama. Your neshama is someone else's neshama that came again. This way is, no, you already had a neshama, but as a child is being born, another Gilgul latches on to this neshama as a, I don't know the word is parasite, but a carrier. You know, like you know what I mean, right? What?
Ibur.
Yeah, so this is known. And this is what the Ramban always says, Soda Ibur. Again, the Ramban didn't expand on Kabbalistic ideas. He was meramis to them. He only hinted to them. But he uses the word Soda Ibur very often in Shari Gmul, in his Pirush al Torah. He uses the word Soda Ibur. What is Soda Ibur? The Soda pregnancy. Oh, I know what pregnancy is. I mean, I was married, knows what pregnancy is. Soda Ibur means the Vlad, the Neshama, which already had Neshama, became impregnated with another Neshama, which can be like a woman has two people, right? A woman who's pregnant has two people. She's two people. It's crazy. So it's a crazy thing, a woman being pregnant. If we think about it, it's unexplainable that a woman can be two people at once. It's just so weird, right? She's carrying on the thing. It's a dual personality, right? Right, schizophrenic, right? Bipolar, right? Bipolar, right? A certain problem. That explains why some women have some.
So not that trend.
Yeah, it's a good shot. It's a very good shot, I think. She doesn't lose the two personalities. One second, I just want to explain. Yeah. So also here, the neshama, he had a neshama, but now he has two neshamas. There's a little carrier on top of him, a little thing that's leeching onto him. That's a second neshama. That is the Gilgul, which requires Tikun. Now the difference over here is sometimes this Gilgul can stop in the middle, meaning he can leave. He won't be there forever. If he receives his tikkun after 2 years, he'll leave. Bye-bye. He doesn't have to kill the kid. He doesn't have to, the child doesn't have to die necessarily. He can leave on his own. You understand? That's first of all. And sometimes he can actually influence the person. But that can happen with the first one also. But it can influence a person in a certain way. So if it was a Tzadik, and good. If it was a Rasha, in a bad way. And sometimes you can find that someone has strong netiyut because he has, unfortunately, this Soda Ibor which connected to him, and certain things can happen which can lead him to these issues. Okay? When the Ramban speaks about Eov, he said he had the problem with Soda Ibor. That's what the Eov, everyone was trying to give him answers, Tzadik Barala. In the end, Elihu, which was his friend who told me that the idea of Soda Ibor was there needed to be a final tikkun, and it affected your situation. So even though he had a beautiful family, he had a lot of kids, he was very wealthy, everything was going great for him, and Pitom everything not, because that Ibor was mitaken, it finished, and it left, bye-bye. And the tikkun had to come from that thing that everything went away. You understand? It all came from this second type of Sod HaIbor. Everyone follow me? Yeah?
So the Neshama knows what's going on.
He knows, but not necessarily the person. You won't know, but he does, right?
Isn't there a type of Ibor the women get where they go, like, you have to get the teeth?
That's what your psychologist told you, right?
We're like, you take it out of Gilgul, yeah. What's the difference?
Oh, so the third one, and this is the last one, those are the two. The third one, which is something we might know, is when a person becomes, if I could use the word, possessed. Which is, as we all know, sometimes it's called a dibuk, sometimes it's called a ruach. This comes as an adult. Number two was happen when in the process of being born, so you don't really know about it. It's part of your neshama, grows with you. You understand? It's better if a person gets a sickness. It's better when he's in utero, because he can work with it. He can work together with the problem. You understand? As opposed to when he's older. A person who is a normal person, a 20-year-old, 30-year-old. I'm going to bring you stories of dibukim. Zat Hashem will speak about dibukim. Okay, we won't experience them, but we'll speak about them. Right? That in the process, the person's 20 years old, and pitom, boom, because the dibuk was sitting inside of a horse in the cell, and she was busy with this horse trying to help it because the horse was dying, and the dibuk had to find somewhere to latch onto, and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and went boom into this lady, and that's it, and she got stuck with the dibuk. She got stuck with the dibuk in the wrong place in the wrong time. You follow? That's what the dibuk is. That's one that we can pick up on. That one you can put on your radar. You can figure it out, because that's already in his adult life, and it's already recognizable, and it's able to be seen. That's all. And the ones that are born in utero, those are not recognizable, but they're very influential. It influences a personality. It can make a person lo aleinu do bad things. And yes, his tikkun is an Esav. Look, Esav also had a certain tikkun. He was supposed to do the right thing, and he didn't do it. Zvulun had a tikkun. They say David HaMelech was a Gilgul of Esav to a certain extent. David HaMelech also he was a redhead, he was a ginger, he loved blood, he was thirsty for blood, it wasn't stam. And he was the Iker Tikun, he was the fourth leg in the Kisei Kavod, because he did an incredible thing. He had a certain Natiya towards Dam, and he was able to fix it up to use it for the right thing. He became the Melech, he used it for wars, the Gemara says he was Oisek in Dam Nida at the time, or Dam Brit Mila, he used it all for Tzidkut, for the right things, and he was able to control his temper in the right places, to do things in the right place. And incredible, and there's no tikkun as big as David HaMelech, what he was able to do, and Esav used it for the rest. So yes, some of us have nitiyot, what we call inclinations towards something else, which comes from this soda ibor, which comes from here, and people use it for the wrong, some people use it right. Some people who have more of an inclination for being a tzaddik, it probably means that a tzaddik that need to have his last tikkun, he needs to have a little bit of a finish up, and he'll have an inclinations towards doing the right things, and hopefully he'll use it for finishing off the tikkun that is required of him. You follow? These are the three different types of Gilgulim which are spoken about also in the Shar Gilgulim, in the Minchat Yehuda, a little bit in the Ramak. These are the three types of Gilgulim. What I didn't speak about, and this we'll speak about next time, is how they are mishtalshel, what we spoke about before, and it goes down, because it doesn't always go straight to a person. A person doesn't automatically always get a Gilgul. Like you were mentioning, sometimes it starts with a tzomeach, a plant. It can move on to a cat afterwards, and from the cat will jump into a person's body afterwards. It could be even in a horse, like I told you in the story just before. It could start, and it moves up from domem, tzomeach, chai, and then eventually to the medeber, and then afterwards, if he makes the tikun, tada, he goes up to Ganem, yay, right? He gets to go up to the final frontier. He gets to go up to Shamayim. So sometimes, like I said, it can be a long process. Unfortunately, it depends on how bad it is. And that's what it takes. And believe it or that Nakuda I'll finish next time. Well, next time we'll speak out the nafkamina, how this can help us understand the idea of Tzadik for Allah that we'll already speak about next time as well.